Here in Dalton Square, in the noisy, bustling centre of Lancaster, we have an imposing statue of Queen Victoria, donated to the city by the wealthy linoleum manufacturer Lord Ashton in 1909. The Queen stands on her plinth, staring sternly across at the town hall in front of us, as if she were keeping a beady eye on what her local political representatives get up to in there. On that plinth, we have a representation of many of the great and good of Victorian society. We have Tennyson, Browning, George Eliot as literary figures. We have Carlyle and Ruskin as social thinkers or Victorian sages. There's Charles Darwin as an important scientist. There are Disraeli and Gladstone as major Victorian politicians. Almost all of the great and good of Victorian society, in fact, are represented around the base of that statue. But there is one crucial figure who is missing, William Morris. So why should that be? Why should he be cut out of the pantheon of the great and the good on this Lancastrian statue? Morris's absence from the base of the Victoria statue is all the more surprising, in fact, because if you turn round and look away from Queen Victoria, you see in the background the Palatine Hall building. Imposing building which used to be a Catholic chapel, later became a picture palace, and in my own time as city councillor served as the planning department of the council. And in that very building, on Tuesday the 2nd of November 1886, William Morris himself was in fact lecturing to the citizens of Lancaster on the subject of socialism, the end and the means. So not only is Morris an important Victorian figure in general, but he actually, unlike so many of the other figures around that statue, has this very specific Lancaster connection, that he was lecturing to the inhabitants of the city, and in fact in the wake of that lecture, a branch of his own political organisation, the Socialist League, was set up in this city and was very active here for about a year. So Morris surely has a stronger case than many of those figures around the plinth to be represented there.
We have a record of Morris's lecture in both the local press and the socialist press. The Lancaster Gazette tells us that the Unitarian minister Reverend E.P. Hall was in the chair, and the atmosphere seems to have been very genial. Reverend Hall jokingly quoted a friend who said it was surely inconsistent to have a lecture on socialism, but to charge as much as £1 shilling for the best seats in the hall, and Morris was repeatedly applauded during his delivery of the talk. Morris's own socialist newspaper Commonweal tells us that there were over 600 people in the hall, which is a very impressive turnout indeed for a dark winter's evening. At the end of the talk, the Reverend Hall announced that he intended to form a local branch of the Socialist League, and some people gave their names as members there and then. Morris himself left to lecture in Preston the next day, and I want to follow through the activities of the Lancaster branch of the Socialist League in the weeks and months ahead.
As we've noted, a branch of Morris's Socialist League was set up in the city immediately after his talk here. Initially, the group met in the city centre on Friday evenings at 8 o'clock in the Market Hall Coffee Tavern. But from the start, they wanted to spread their socialist message out more widely in the region. So on the 8th of January 1887, one of the most energetic of the younger members, Leonard Hall, who incidentally is no relation to the Reverend Edward Hall, was here in Gallgate, facing extremely inclement weather conditions and lecturing to a crowd of working men, who, according to the branch report, were extremely attentive and appeared wholly with the speaker. Even today, as you can see, there's enough of Gallgate's Victorian industrial heritage left for us to imagine what fertile recruiting conditions the village must have offered to the early socialists. So I like to picture them here in those days, energetically, boldly defying the elements and spreading their political enthusiasm and ideas. The Lancaster socialists would soon have to defy the elements again for other reasons, because capitalism was striking back. The Lancaster employers had sent spies to some of the Socialist League branch meetings, they had sacked some of the workers who had committed themselves to the revolutionary cause, and they had lent heavily on local tradespeople not to provide meeting places for the Lancaster socialists. So in the branch report for March the 19th we read that although, owing to prejudice, we are still without a meeting place, we keep the ball of agitation rolling and what is more, gathering. We are holding meetings from this day forward at 11 AM Sundays on the quayside. So I like to think of this brave band of pioneers, driven out of the town centre though they were, meeting here in blustery conditions on St George's Quay. We have to imagine talks on topics like modern commerce and slavery and the way out, given on those Sunday mornings in the elements here in the outdoors. Lancaster had, of course, been an important port for the British slave trade in the 18th century. That racially based slavery might have been abolished, but what now mattered was working class slavery under industrial capitalism back in England itself. So next time you enjoy a genial sunny stroll down the quayside, listen very carefully and you might just hear the ghosts of the Lancaster Socialists animatedly discussing the great political questions of their day. In April 1887, the tone of the branch reports of the Lancaster Socialist League in Commonweal suddenly brightens up considerably, and we read, "New club quarters in Sun Street, always open and revolutionary literature on the table." Fighting talk then, and the Lancaster Socialists were once more back in business. Here we are in Sun Street, although I don't know actually which building the Socialists inhabited, but having a settled base here certainly seems to have been good for morale. Seems to have restored their fighting spirit, and they very soon, for example, sent out a team as far as Barrow to try and recruit from among the unemployed workers there. We get a taste of the Sun Street meetings themselves from reports in Commonweal. So let me just read you one of those. This is for the 18th of June. At the weekly meeting of members at our club in Sun Street, E.P. Hall read extracts from Shelley's Notes to Poems, followed by hot discussions on marriage and the political situation. We must imagine Sun Street in 1887 as being the very hub of that kind of excited socialist debate in Lancaster. The last entry about the Lancaster branch of the Socialist League occurs in Morris's newspaper Commonweal on July the 9th, 1887, and it begins as follows: "Are spreading the gospel as usual in ways most expedient in such a camp of Philistines as this, and have distributed a number of Jubilee leaflets." We can detect a certain note of discouragement there, I think. Describing Lancaster as a camp of Philistines suggests surely that the victimisation of socialists by the local employers was beginning to tell upon the group. Yet they clearly still had some fight in them, as that reference to the Jubilee leaflets reminds us. 1887 was Victoria's 50th year on the throne, and the local Lancaster bigwigs were in complacent and celebratory mood. Thomas Story was knighted at Balmoral and wanted to devote a school of art to the city to commemorate the occasion. His great rival Williamson financed a special train carrying 5,000 school children and 300 of their teachers down to the Royal Jubilee exhibition in Manchester. So I want to end really by celebrating the courage of the Lancaster Socialists as they distributed their anti-Jubilee leaflets and tried to prick the complacency of that great national celebration. It takes a good deal of courage, after all, to stand against the great tides of jingoism that sweep the country on these royal occasions. So if Morris were with us today, I don't think he would be complaining about not being on the plinth of the Queen Victoria statue. He would take a more radical view. He would probably want to pull down the entire pompous thing itself and start all over again, just as he demanded that the ugly solemn memorials be removed from Westminster Abbey in London. So let us then finally, in utopian mood, imagine a far distant socialist Lancaster, in which Queen Victoria is nothing more than a distant memory, and in which here in Dalton Square we perhaps have a very fine statue of Morris himself, commemorating that inspirational visit to the city he made on Tuesday, November the 2nd, 1886.